Welcome back to Cohen and Kerr. We're having an interview with Laura Sellers, the Garrisonville supervisor and candidate for re-election in this November's election. I'm joined by the ever-talented and very intelligent Amanda Anastanzo, who is with the Freelance Star. So thank you, Amanda. Everybody calls her Amanda V for a very good reason, because people like me cannot pronounce it. So Amanda, the next question is up to you.
Okay, so a developer's request for tax incentives to bring a Harris Teeter to Aquia Town Center generated quite a bit of controversy. What do you see as the role of tax incentives in attracting businesses to the county?
The role of tax incentives to attract businesses, I think they should be very limited. We have a great community. We have a very wealthy community. We have people who are here who are stranded because we know they're not getting on the highway on the weekends because it's going to take them forever. So I personally am very hesitant to support the idea of a TIF. And when developers come in my district, the very first thing I say is, give me a project that doesn't require a TIF. Because we need the tax dollars. We need more teachers. We need more deputies. We need more firefighters. We pay a lot of money every year in debt service on things that we've already bought. So to just give away tax money seems odd to me. So I'm not a huge fan of them, but I think if the right project comes, then all right, let's talk about it. But I'm not a huge supporter.
And Laura, the recent proffer law signed into effect by Governor McAuliffe alters the way that new development will pay for the impact of that development. How do you plan to deal with this new law and its impacts on Stafford?
The new proffer law, it's tough for localities. And I think that's another example of where the General Assembly doesn't understand what we go through in not only this county, but in this region. And I think it really does point to some lackadaisical leadership down there. We need people to be saying to the General Assembly, you can't pass these proffer laws that limit what we can do. This said, I do think the program and the process needed to be changed because it kind of allowed developers to get away with not meeting with the community. If I was queen for a day, I would write into the law that developers have to sit down with the impacted neighbors. Each and every one of the people they share a property line with should have their contact information and be able to call them and talk about what exactly is happening on the property next to them. And then as you kind of go out and away from the development, then you start bringing in bigger groups of people. But those folks who share a property line should not, the first time they know something's happening next to them, see a yellow sign for a planning commission meeting. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to everybody else. And so that is a model that I have inherited in the district, and that is something that we do. So when a developer comes to me, we sit down and we generally go over what they want to do and what the process is. And then, well, this is before proper legislation. Now I don't speak for the developers, but before we would sit down and go over what they generally wanted, and then they'd go to the Planning Commission. And when they go to the Planning Commission, there are things that planning commissioners bring up, whether it's transportation or it's buffers. And we drop those down. The developer and I meet again, and then county staff is told to please send out letters to the most directly impacted neighbors. And before it ever comes into the Board of Supervisors chamber for a public hearing, those neighbors have had an opportunity to speak to the developer themselves and typically their counsel. And at first it was a little, you got a little bit of hesitation from the developers, but now I think they actually enjoy it. And other things that we do is for the schools, and this I actually adopted from Mrs. Kidby, who said they need to be speaking to the schools they're impacting. And so the developer is told to go speak to that school and figure out what is the need there. What do they need and what could help them, and so they work directly. I'm taken out of the equation. The only time they'll see me again is when we come to public hearing and then ultimately a vote. So that's what I would like to see the General Assembly do, is really focus more on the process of how it gets done to more inclusion of the community than the way it is now.
And Laura, what are your top 3 priorities for the county?
In the next 4 years, number one, schools. As we have seen, we've made great progress in schools. But the Board of Supervisors needs to have more of a vision in that. So something that I've mentioned to the SEA, that I've mentioned in other interviews, is I want to see us go away from the traditional model of a percentage of the budget and actually have supervisors sit down and start talking about it as a per pupil amount. So the process in developing that is first we sit down with the schools and we say, well, how are we going to define this per pupil amount? And do we include debt service? Do we include private day school? Do we include public day school? Once you have that down, then the supervisors take what we already have out there. We already have a staffing plan. We already have a, what do they call it? Dr. Benson's, where the number of kids that are in there, a growth model. Let's take those and see what we need to do on a per pupil amount to make those things happen. So that's number one priority. The second priority for me is transportation. The Garrisonville district should be 100% walkable or have bikes. We've done a good job of getting some extra sidewalks, but I think we can do more. It's a long process. As we've seen, it took 3 years to get Mine Road a sidewalk, and that's not even completed yet. But more sidewalks along North Stafford. And my number 3 one that I am not going to be quiet about the next 4 years is a firing range. We have a lot of federal law enforcement in this community, and we have a lot of folks who truly believe in the Second Amendment, want to exercise their rights to the Second Amendment, and we're very limited in where they can go. So I would like to see the county make a concerted effort to bring and attract a commercial firing range here. And one of the ways we can pay for it is through, you make it a GSA certified firing range, and there are grant programs. So those are my comments.
All right, one of our top 3 things is that you will come back after the break so that you can learn more of what Laura Sellers believes as we head into the November election. And as we go into the break, we once again thank the Stafford Regional Airport for allowing us to come here and do our taping here. So come back after the break.